Israel is massing troops near Gaza as it prepares for the next phase of its military operation to, quote, wipe out Hamas. The operation is in retaliation for the Hamas attacks on Israeli communities last week. Thousands of people continue to flee North Gaza following Israeli evacuation orders. The UN estimates nearly 1 million Palestinians have now been displaced. The World Health Organization has condemned Israel's order for the evacuation of 22 hospitals in northern Gaza ahead of an expected ground offensive against Hamas. They said forcing more than 2,000 patients, including those in intensive care and newborns in incubators, to relocate is like a death sentence. The Foreign Office is telling British nationals in Gaza to prepare in case the Rafah border crossing into Egypt is opened. Crossing in the south of Gaza is currently the only route out of the territory, with Hamas controlling who can pass through. And President Biden has been speaking again to the Israeli and Palestinian leaders, with news that a second US strike group is now on its way to the eastern Mediterranean to deter hostile actions against Israel. So we're going to continue our coverage of the situation in Gaza. The United Nations says nearly 1 million Palestinians have fled their homes in the Gaza Strip in the weeks since Israel launched its military response to the killings and kidnappings by Hamas. The entire enclave has been hit, as you know, in the past week by Israeli airstrikes from Gaza City in the north all the way down to that Rafah border in the south. The border crossing there with Egypt has remained shut since the Hamas attacks last weekend. There are crowds
Sorry about the morning and groaning, but I'm in severe pain.
Close to the crossing after news that an evacuation route may at some point open. Our correspondent John Donison sent this report and a warning you might find some of the images in his report distressing.
Outside the main hospital in Rafah.
I asked him and he said because they need to rid Gaza of Hamas, and that is the ultimate plan. Now, the difficulty is how they do that, because there are aid organizations that are trying to get supplies, trying to get anything to those who are in desperate need of the basics of life. And there are civilians in one of the most densely populated places on Earth trying to figure out where in God's name they can go to be safe, that just, to get out of the way of harm. This is a really, really difficult situation that Gaza finds itself in.
Completely off guard. You just said that we don't know where the hostages are in Gaza. And yet the Israelis claim, the IDF claims, that it is bombing places that it knows are Hamas targets. How can we be sure that that's true? I mean, Hamas is a terrorist group, don't get me wrong, but how do we know anything about what they're hitting, given the fact that it doesn't sound like any of the intelligence inside Gaza is particularly good?
Well, Jake, Israel has known where particular parts of Hamas's terrorist infrastructure have been located. They know, for example, where rockets are fired from, and they can go back to those locations to take out the rocket emplacements. They know from various forms of intelligence collection where certain individuals are located who are senior commanders in Hamas, who are part of the bloody and barbaric attacks that took place against Israel last Saturday. So they do have information to be able to go after specific targets, actionable targets, similar to the way the United States has been able to do that in other places, in other contexts. The United States has taken a very clear stand. It is a stand that we don't just take in this situation, but we've taken all along, which is that we stand for the rule of law, we stand for the law of war, we stand for the protection of civilians, and we want to make sure that innocent Palestinians who have nothing to do with Hamas can get to safe areas where they will be safe from bombardment and where they will have access to necessities like food, water, shelter, and medicine.
Well, I mean, you say you stand for the rule of law. Again, Hamas is vile. What they did 8 days ago, they're targeting civilians. It's horrific. But what's going on right now is not just a punishment of Hamas. More than 700 children have been reportedly killed in Gaza. And obviously, electricity, food, water supplies have been cut off by Israel to the totality of Gaza. Obviously, the blockade is not just by Israel, it's by Egypt too. Take a listen to what Secretary Blinken said last year when Putin was targeting Ukrainian infrastructure.
Heat, water, electricity, for children, for the elderly, for the sick. These are President Putin's new targets. He's hitting them hard. This brutalization of Ukraine's people is barbaric.
Now look, Israel is not Russia. Gaza is not Ukraine. It's a different situation. But cutting off supplies, cutting off heat, cutting off water to civilians, what's the difference?
Well, first, thank you for saying that Israel is not Russia, because Israel is not Russia. Second,
Civilians
as
are
I said
civilians,
before,
Jake.
we are in
Civilians are
constant
civilians.
contact. Yes, absolutely they are, and they deserve, as I said before, access to water and medicine and food. And we are working actively to ensure that that happens. And I can tell you this morning, Jake, that I have been in touch with my Israeli counterparts just within the last hour, who report to me that they have in fact turned the water pipe back on in southern Gaza. That has been the subject of discussion over the course of the past few days. The United States is going to continue working with Israel, with the UN, with Egypt, with Jordan, and with a lot of the groups on the ground to make sure that innocent Palestinians get access to those basic necessities and are protected from bombardment, because they deserve that right, the right to those necessities and the right to safety and security every bit as much as Ukrainian civilians do or civilians anywhere do. And the United States hasn't made any bones about that. We're working hard on that. We're working to make sure that that is the case as this unfolds. And it's something that has been a high priority for President Biden, for Secretary Blinken, and for myself.
But you're not telling the Israelis to let the Palestinian hospitals have power.
Our position is that hospitals should be able to function, hospitals should not be targeted, people should be able to get access to life-saving medical care. We don't qualify these statements, we don't say that there's some kind of caveat to them. These are simple, clear, declarative statements. It is our position that's consistent with the law of armed conflict, the law of war. It's consistent with our view as we have presented it. And I would just say, Jake, that there's a lot of reports in the fog of war about things that happen. We're not going to respond to every one of those, because we will seek clarity in the appropriate way, but we will never back off our basic principles and our basic proposition, which we have made both publicly and privately, about our view about how civilians have to be protected.
I haven't asked you, I haven't any of the fog of war stories. I've seen stories that blame Israel for things that later on it turns out Hamas did them. I get it, I understand, but we have reports, and I'm sure you have them too, that hundreds of the individuals stuck in Gaza are American citizens. You know that too. There are also hundreds of thousands of Americans in Israel that are trying to get out also, and the Biden administration is doing a lot to get those individuals out. 29 of the individuals killed by Hamas were American, and there are, I think, what is it, like something like 40 Americans that are unaccounted for who were maybe taken prisoner by Hamas. But I want to talk to you about one Palestinian American woman we talked to, named Haneen Okal. She's from New Jersey. She's got 3 kids, 8, 2, and 2 months. I sent you the interview we did with her earlier in the week. She got to the border, the Rafah crossing. She can't get out. She can't get out of Gaza because the Egyptians won't open the crossing. Listen to what she told me earlier this week.
We tried to contact the U.S. embassy so many times. Unfortunately, they couldn't help us at all. I contacted them through the phone, via email. I texted, and I called different numbers, but nobody. I couldn't hear back from any. We're all here feeling abandoned, and we're feeling that we're left alone.
I don't know how many billions of dollars we give the Egyptians every year. Why can't you tell President Sisi to open the border to let Americans out?
We have told President Sisi to open the border to let Americans out. The situation there at the crossing is actually more complicated. The Egyptians have in fact agreed to allow Americans to depart to get safe passage through the Rafah crossing. The Israelis agreed to ensure that the area around there would be safe, at least as far as they were able to do so. The question when we tried to move a group yesterday was actually Hamas taking steps to try and stop that from happening. But we are continuing to work this around the clock, and we are doing all that we can to make sure that American citizens who are in Gaza can get through that border crossing. Secretary Blinken, in fact, is in Egypt today, meeting with the president of Egypt. This is at the top of his list to help get those American citizens out of Gaza. Anyone who is a U.S. citizen should have the right to free passage through there, and then have the U.S. government facilitate their travel home.
Yeah, I don't doubt that the biggest problem in all this is Hamas. Jake Sullivan, thank you so much. Appreciate it. She was UN ambassador. Now she wants to be president. So what does she make of the UN warnings about Israel's war in Gaza? Nikki Haley joins me live next. And then, are Republicans on track for another embarrassing speaker vote this week? Another one. A congressman who is quite furious at what is going on with the GOP will be here. Stay with us.
If we want a more viable future for our kids, we need to find more sustainable ways of doing things. America's plastic makers are investing billions of dollars in new technologies and creating plastic products that are more recyclable, durable, and dependable. Our goal is a cleaner, healthier planet for generations to come. For a better tomorrow, we're focused on making plastics better today.
Only United Healthcare Medicare Advantage plans come with a U-card, one simple member card that opens doors for what matters.
What if we need to see a doctor away from home?
We got you. With Medicare Advantage's largest national provider network, only from United Healthcare.
Moderate to severe eczema still disrupts my skin. Despite treatment, it disrupts my skin with itch. It disrupts my skin with rash. But now, I can disrupt eczema with Rinvoq. Rinvoq is not a steroid, topical, or injection. It's one pill once a day. Many taking Rinvoq saw clear or almost clear skin, while some saw up to 100% clear skin. And they felt dramatic and fast itch relief, some as early as 2 days. That's Rinvoq relief.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal, cancers, including lymphoma and skin cancer. Death, heart attack, stroke, and tears in the stomach or intestines occur. People 50 and older with at least one heart disease risk factor have higher risks. Don't take if allergic to Rinvoq, as serious reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant.
Disrupt the itch and rash of eczema. Talk to your doctor about Rinvoq.
Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
At the Salvation Army, a meal isn't just a meal. It's fuel for imagination, determination, and dreams. It's energy to be role models, change makers, and to just be kids. With your gift, a full meal means a full heart.
I'm talking about all the suffering in the Gaza Strip. I got my own suffering going on right here. Sorry about that. I know it's probably not very appetizing. I don't know what's going on with me. Severe abdominal pain, head pain. I do have a brain injury. I've been going through it all night, no sleep. A song by Paul Beckman, Pauline song. Hamas stops Americans from leaving the Gaza Strip. Created October. See what the date is. 15th, 2023. A song by Paul Beckman, Pauline song. Also the new and first leader of humankind in the free world. Hamas stops Americans from leaving the Gaza Strip. Hamas stops Americans from leaving the Gaza Strip. They had it all set up between the parties involved. A-OK, good to go. Had it all set up between the parties involved. A-OK, good to go. But Hamas stepped in and made it so it couldn't happen. They're still trying to get it on board, trying to make it so it can happen. They're still trying. They won't admit defeat when Hamas stepped in to prevent Americans from leaving the Gaza Strip who wanted to go.